And we're going to bring up Jabril, who is a MXGM lead organizer, who's going to speak to the report. This is our end of the year 2012 report on the killings of our people nationwide.
All right, greetings everyone. As Linda mentioned, we're dealing with an epidemic. That's really what it is. If we had a situation where every 36 hours someone was being taken down by a public health situation, there would be a response. And what we've seen over the last year is that our every 36 hours report has changed into every 28 hours. Meaning that every 28 hours in this country, a person from our community, an African American, is killed either by law enforcement, by security guards, or by self-styled vigilantes, as was the case with Trayvon Martin. Okay? This is a problem which is happening nationwide. We all know locally the situations that have happened here. We've been out in Flatbush for the last 2 weeks trying to console the family of another victim of NYPD. And let's be very clear, he was a victim of NYPD. Kimani Gray was a victim of Stop-and-Frisk. And a policy that believes that we have no rights. Because we live in a high crime neighborhood, we have no rights. That we will be stopped and frisked. And with disobedience to a stop and frisk, we could very easily be murdered. And so that's why we stand here today. That's why all these people, all these mothers are standing here, is because we don't want to see another person murdered because they flinched the wrong way, or because they didn't understand that they had rights and they were being stopped. We don't want to see that happen, okay? It's very clear that the NYPD has a problem with understanding what suspicion is. Why is a person more suspicious in a certain neighborhood than when they're in another neighborhood? What creates that suspicion? What makes me look more suspicious when I'm walking down the street in Harlem than anyone else when they're walking down Park Avenue? The police need to investigate crime, okay? The problem with this city is that the police are not investigating that crime. What they're doing is going off of their subjective suspicions when they come into our neighborhoods, and they are actually violating our constitutional rights. Okay? As we heard on the stand today, the reason why this is happening is because of the pressure, right? There's tremendous pressure from the higher-ups. Officer Moriello testified directly that he was pressured to keep the hounds off. Those were his direct words, keep the hounds off, because all of their superior officers want them to produce more stop and frisk. They want them to produce more arrests, produce summonses. Why? Because it's about numbers. As we heard Margarita state earlier, it's about the numbers. They care about the numbers, but we care about our lives, and we will never stop fighting for our lives. I want to be very clear.
It's not just your lives, it's how you grow up in the community, isn't it?
Absolutely. Stop and frisk enables bad policing. Everyone needs to be clear on that. The police would not be able to run up on young people and end up in a shooting, a questionable shooting such as Kimani Gray, if they were not empowered, enabled by a program like Stop and Frisk, if they were not told by their commanding officers, go up to that building and stop all those kids, as we heard on tape today in this court. All right? That is why these officers are doing it. And we've actually even seen some brave officers who have sued the New York City Police Department because they know it's wrong. And I salute anyone who knows it's wrong and stands up. Amadou Diallo, Chantel Davis, Patrick Dorismond. These are all stories that we know about. We also know about a young man who was stopped 60 times before he was 18, as was chronicled in the New York Times early this year. The scars of stop and frisk. Imagine if you were stopped in 60 times before you turned 18, how you might feel about a system, how you might feel about your future. Okay, this is what we're trying to correct. We also heard this week about DEA cops who were indicted for falsely planting crack on people and trying to spread out the felonies throughout their precinct because, again, they needed to make sure that their numbers were maintained. So we have cops actually violating the law, planting drugs on people because of stop and frisk and because of CompStat, all right? The statistical approach is the problem in our communities. When the police look at us as strictly crime trends, that's when we see people lose their lives because the police are not dealing with the humanity of those people in this community. It's pretty clear that police are being forced to write false reports, as was also testified to. Last week on the stand, we had an officer tell us that he had to write 250s when he didn't even observe the stop. His commanding officer would tell him to write this report up even if he wasn't present and he never saw the person violate any laws. That clearly shows that we're not practicing law enforcement. What we're practicing is statistics, and we're sick of it. We're not going to have it anymore. At the end of the day, there is no community trust. The people that live in my neighborhood do not trust the NYPD, and the reason why they do not trust the NYPD is because they have lost trust due to mistreatment. A lot of them have been violated. People accept it as a basic fact of life that the police will mistreat you in my community, and that is not fair. The building 120 Chauncey that was mentioned on the stand today is directly around the corner from me. It's a building I've walked by my entire life. And my community is full of hard-working people who live in housing projects, who live in low-income residencies, the same ones that were mentioned on the stand as if they were criminal enterprises. Okay? We have to understand people do not have a choice where they live in the city. They do not have a choice that they're going to walk down the street at a certain time, and their rights should be respected if they are not committing a crime. Plain and simple. Philip Banks mentioned earlier this week that even he was stopped. He's the new police chief of staff. Even he was stopped, and he felt that it was wrong. Yet he still feels that stop and frisk is a valid policy. This is why NYPD has a problem. They're hiring people who know they have a problem and still won't recognize that it needs change. I'm going to wrap up because I know we have other speakers, but I just want to say finally that Ray Kelly must go. Everyone knows here, Ray Kelly is the problem. Ray Kelly must go. Whoever runs for mayor, I hope they understand that Ray Kelly is part of the problem and it must be rectified. Thank you.